Welcome to a new edition of the Real Wealth Solutions podcast. I'm Darren Light, along with my co-host Greg Scully. Today is our guest, Michelle Oppelt. We are delighted to have her. She is a multifamily investor. She's also an entrepreneur. She's also a mom. She lives close to the Memphis area. Michelle, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, let's just get started, if you don't mind, and tell us a little bit more about your professional background, how you got started in maybe your business you have now, and how you sort of ventured into multifamily real estate, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So my educational background's in bioscience. Originally, I thought I'd probably go be a high school biology teacher after college. And then after college, when I had my son, I didn't want to take a full-time teaching position because I wanted to stay with him. So I started trying to think of ways that I could, still use my science background and teach science, but not have to go teach at a school. So that's kind of how my first company, Smarty Cat Kids, was born. He was in preschool, and I was teaching at this preschool that was supposed to have a really great science program. And once I got there, I found out it was really lacking. I thought I could bring a little more life to making science learning fun for kids. So I just put together some classes and rented a room at a local church and put out a little ad saying, does anybody want to come join my son? We'll do some fun science stuff. And it just took off. So there was a very obvious need for it right away. I got kind of lucky that there was a recreation department right next door. So they heard about me. They said, hey, can you come do science programs for us? Then once one rec department heard about it, then all the neighboring towns said, hey, can you come do? So I became like a traveling one-woman science show kind of overnight. So that's how Smarty Cat Kids started. That was 13 years ago. And we grew that. I took on a business partner in 2010, and we grew that to being about 24 different locations, a few, 10,000 kids a year, something like that. And then COVID hit. So that's when everything kind of changed because we couldn't teach in-person classes anymore. And I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. And then last year, once I had gotten Smarty Cat Kids to kind of being a machine that was kind of running on its own, I would oversee it, but I wasn't teaching classes anymore. That's when I got into real estate investing, when I had time on my hands and realized I needed to start investing for my future.
Yeah, I'll jump in, or
let
me. Because in your bio, serial entrepreneur, many businesses under your belt, some of which maybe aren't existing anymore. I don't know. You can correct me on that. But I was curious, through that entrepreneurial process, when did the light bulb for real estate go off, and why? I mean, what attracted you to it compared to what other avenues that you'd pursued?
That's a good question. I did have other businesses. I ran a cupcake. I've always been kind of, like I said, serial entrepreneur. We own a cupcake catering company that we also started children's baking classes. And we realized, my partner and I, very quickly that we loved teaching the kids how to bake, and we hated baking for adults. It was not my thing to make thousands of cupcakes a day. So we ended up, that's how Smarty Cat Kids went from just science to branching into other subjects, and realized my passion is definitely for children's education. And we have a couple patents and children's books and things like that as well, that I won't bore you with. With real estate, I don't know. I always just knew I had an interest in it, and I'm not put my money in a 401k kind of person. Like, I really wanted to have control over my investments, and I liked real estate. So I figured it made sense to go in that direction. I started with just buying some land. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it, other than maybe start a campground or something one day. I wasn't sure. I just knew I wanted to get started. So I kind of started buying up some land near a lake. And then I started networking with other people and realizing, I should really learn about where I'm putting my money and make wiser decisions. So that's how I started studying. And it became pretty apparent early on that multifamily was the direction I wanted to go in, just from realizing the, scalability of it. And I really enjoyed the people I was meeting in this space, like Darren, for example. And so that's how I decided I'm going to put all my focus into multifamily investing.
So the majority of the people you met, was it just through networking? I mean, we met through Facebook. You joined a group and I was in it and then just went from there. It sounds like you really did your research and knew, okay, this is the kind of real estate that's going to get me there faster, whatever that goal is. Just local meetups and getting online. Is that how you just kind of went about it?
Every place I could figure out how to connect with people. I'm a lifelong learner. I just love learning new things, but I also realized in the beginning, you're in that sponge phase, right? I don't know anything. I need to find people that I can help and that can help me. I really love building those relationships. So yeah, I did local meetups, still do. I joined a mastermind. I started my own mastermind, well, with two other women, of course, that have more experience than I do. Networking is so important. So on Facebook, it's actually a great way to network with people all across the country. So anywhere I can find it.
I love the fact too that I don't think you paid crazy money to a guru to learn. At least I don't think you did, to learn some things. You might have joined an education program. I'm not sure. Did you do something like that?
So I got lucky with, when I first realized I was going to get into multifamily, somebody had told me to listen to Rod Khleif's podcast. And so I started doing that. And it was maybe a month after just listening to podcasts, he had put out a contest for somebody to be mentored one-on-one. And I said, sure, why not? So I entered that contest. This was June of last year, and got to the final interview. And I think I reminded him of his mom. He said something like that with all the kids. And anyway, he picked me. So I do have a great bit of gratitude for Rod Khleif and everything I've learned from him so far.
I remember seeing that, and I did not realize that is actually what had happened. Wow, that's crazy, but cool at the same time.
Nuts.
So how did you find your main one or two, I guess, partners? And then at what point did you three women decide we need this mastermind for women? And tell me a little bit more about how that got started.
Yeah, so actually my very first multifamily meetup is where I met Candace Pilgrim, one of my partners with that. I just happened to sit next to her. We didn't know each other. It was a very small group, and we hit it off right away, and stayed in touch. And then one night I had called her and said, I've been looking for, because like we said, networking is super important. But it is very male dominated. I think that's changing, or maybe it's just because my eyes are opening more to it. But at first glance, it's very male dominated. So I'd asked her, are there any women's groups? I can't find any that are focused on multifamily. And she said, I've been looking for the same thing. And she had been talking to Chat. They were at a conference a couple months earlier, said the same thing. And we've been looking for a women's group. And we said, well, we don't know of any. So if it's that hard to find, maybe we should just start our own. And it just kind of happened that way.
How many members do you guys have currently?
About 500, maybe 600 now. I'd have to check.
Now, I know at one time, and COVID may have changed this, are you guys still doing like monthly webinars or meetings? What's that look like right now?
We still do obviously all the virtual stuff. We were supposed to have our first in-person mastermind retreat down in Cabo actually in August.
Oh my! Wow. Okay.
COVID pushed that back, but yeah, we still meet at least once a month, and we're very active in the Facebook group.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Greg?
It's definitely male dominated. I was, just looking at Facebook. I was looking at some pictures and the representation. I was like, oh, okay, well, looks like Congress. Yeah, and my wife, she's involved in your mastermind. I don't know if we've ever met in person. I don't know, maybe not. But
I'm not
Kim
sure
Scully.
Either.
Anyway,
it gets hard to remember who I've met in person and who I've only met virtually.
Because there tends to be stereotypes, and this happened the other day. So I'm curious, what you think about this. We were at a nice little lunch meeting talking about a property, and there's most of my partners, and Kim is my partner. We're business partners. And there's this old guy, and he's got this really nice property. And part of the development is individual offices, like a work share type thing. And he looks at her and he goes, and I think you'll really enjoy, decorating these offices. And
looks right at her.
And that's kind of a stereotype observation of a typical women's role. And stereotypes typically are based on some kernel of truth. But it's when that kernel of truth turns into the expectation that it really starts to get messy. I mean, just, what are your thoughts on when that kind of stuff happens, and how do you stay on the other side of the table?
Oh gosh, that's such a big question.
Or have you
Yeah,
had
there was
that?
a lot there. I mean, it was just like,
Have you had that happen? And
Oh
you
yeah,
just-
of course.
Yeah,
And
okay.
not just, not just with real estate, but also having a science background, it's kind
yeah,
of
right.
assumed.
Girls
Uh,
That's a
can't
good
do
point.
math.
yeah,
Yeah.
math and science are my passion. So, well, more so science than math, but yeah, you deal with it as a woman, but you kind of have to take, like anything with life, I guess, the good with the bad, because there are going to be that kind of expectation. I was on a phone call once, and I really, I really respect these two partners. I won't name who they are. But we were on a call, and at the end of the call, one of them said, "Wow, you're sharper than I am were sharper than I thought." Something to that effect. And I was like, well, goodness, what did you think going into this? Like, he had an expectation that I wasn't going to be very bright, I suppose. And kind of put his foot in his mouth and apologize. But you get that. But at the same time, because there's not as many of us, we do stand out also. People, it's a little easier for people to remember me sometimes. You meet so many people at a conference, and I do stand out a little bit. So you just have to kind of take the good with the bad and try to, change people's expectations as you meet them, I suppose.
I do. I will say that, having been to several bigger events in multifamily space, that I think I can see how you would naturally stand out as a woman who's just working the room, networking, and just, type A personality, because even though they are there and they're wanting to do that, it just does not. I think, unfortunately, there's some women that maybe still think, oh, I need to stay in my place, which is sad. But yeah, I just thought about that. I'm like, wow, that just still happens.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I mean, I like what you talked about, just the expectations. Maybe some of it is just don't have expectations. And I don't mean that in any kind of negative way. It's just like, find out what you're going to find out. And I don't think in my example, there was certainly no harm meant. And,
Right.
the answer could have possibly been, yeah, I really would, if it was a different person sitting there. But it was that traditional role turning
Yeah.
into the expected role, which I think is,
The gentleman's 80 years old, so I'm sure
yeah,
he,
right. He probably didn't know where his
that's what
keys
he,
were either. So I'm thinking,
yeah. So I have a question in regards to just your other businesses. Does almost everything, is it sort of ancillary off of Smarty Cat, like these other things you have going on, like the cupcakes, like you've got a couple patents, this, that, and the other. I want to know about the patents. Come on, this is, unless you can't share it,
No, that was
if
actually,
they're out
gosh,
there, that's pretty cool.
I learned a lot about designing a product and getting it patented, that whole process. It was completely unrelated. It was actually a fashion product.
Okay.
Not anyway. It's difficult. I won't get too into it, but it was a something to help hold a cell phone for women that conceals it and your
Okay.
keys and whatnot. So it's like a hidden purse, basically.
So it's just a crazy idea that you had because you.
It was just an idea because just from
need.
running around and needing to be
All right.
hands-free and not wanting to wear a fanny pack, and it was like a hidden. So I thought, well, gosh, I could do some, it was like function meets fashion type thing.
Yeah.
But then I, again, just like the cupcake thing, just because I can do it, I learned I don't want to do it. we got the product on HSN, and that was it was a big
That's great.
learning process. Yeah, it's really cool to have the experience under my belt, but I could never design products just for a living.
Yeah, I get it.
And do retail. Yeah. Maybe I could design some patents and then sell the patents. I could see myself doing that.
Yeah, that would be
That's
awesome.
what I was thinking. I mean, you have the patent, so even if the product doesn't work,
that's the plan at this point. Is we're just going to sell the patent because
that's
I don't want to. To me, being a mom of 4 kids, my time is so limited, and as I get older, my mindset very much shifts to, well, anything that I'm doing is taking some time away from them. So I'm very careful about what I choose to put my time toward. So yeah, if it's not something I'm truly passionate about, I just kind of figure out a way to get it off my plate.
So with your multifamily investments, are you mostly an LP in them or both sides of the coin currently? Or active? How active are you?
So I'm mainly going to be boots on the ground and just looking for acquisitions is pretty much my role so far. I've worked with a couple teams I'm still waiting to close on my first multifamily deal. I've had a couple that have come close, but I just started last summer even researching it. So it's going to take me a little bit longer than most people would think because, the 4 kids and, and everything else I have going on. But I'm not against being an LP. I would prefer to have a little bit more of an active role. Once COVID hit and all of a sudden my other company, which was its self-running machine at that point, all of a sudden it needed me to be back in it because we had to switch everything virtual. It's been an incredible amount of work put on my plate. So I don't like to say that it's put real estate on the back burner, but it's definitely made it more 50-50, whereas opposed to it was more like maybe 10% on that company and 90% was on real estate. It's pretty much 50-50 at this point.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute, because I mean that had to have been a huge pivot, because it sounded like you were sort of brick and mortar based, or at least person to person, physically based, and then that more or less evaporated overnight then.
Yep. Yeah. Our whole business model was based upon getting contracts with schools and recreation departments, and we would run their science and art programs for them. So we'd go into after school, summer camps, that sort of thing. And once school shut down, like teachers still got paid, but we're not staff members. We're third-party contractors. So it just evaporated overnight.
First on the list.
So, I mean, you certainly still have that scalability with that model, because there's, I don't know, thousands of school districts in the U.S. How many states did you operate in?
So we were in New Jersey first. We had a couple dozen locations there. Then I moved down to the Mid-South and we started a location here. But we had actually just started rolling out a program to go national when COVID hit. So we were partnering with women, and men, I shouldn't say just women, but women are the ones that had shown more interest to go off your expectations type thing. I shouldn't even say that. But yeah, we were going to go national, and then everything just shut down. So we could no longer obviously partner with anybody when all the schools across the country were closed. So that side of the business is put on pause. We're not going to stop it. I mean, once schools open back up, we'll resume, but it's kind of it's given us a really good push to also explore the virtual side of things. And now once schools do open, we'll be able to do both, which is really great.
So we've seen,
because I got on, well, I'm sorry, Darren, I keep talking over you, but.
No. I'm just going to say, we've seen the launch now of the virtual business. And I'm going to give an example here in a second, but I know you put a ton of work into that. At what point did you realize after March, whatever date, oh my gosh, we got to do this, or this is what we have to do. What's it going to take? And do you already see that model? You've already got a projected revenue model out there, which I think at this point, you may still be doing free stuff, but, and if you don't want to share a lot of that, that's fine as well. But just kind of wrap your head around, okay, how will this increase my bottom line? I know you're trying to deliver value to the kids, obviously, but.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And we'll always do some sort of free stuff, and YouTube channel and free lessons. Like people can subscribe right now on our website for free lessons right to your inbox. So we'll always do that. But we're going to have for people that want to take it a step further, we'll have other options. So things like virtual live classes. We have something which I can't talk about just yet, but it's rolling out for Christmas season. That'll be really fun. So definitely going to have products out there. But it's exciting. When we went, to answer your question about when, it was difficult. I think it was March 11th, I got the first call that, hey, our first school shut down. And then they were saying for 2 weeks, and I knew it wasn't going to be 2 weeks, just, from researching a little bit more about the pandemic. So, but at the same time, all of a sudden I'm getting calls that my kids are coming home. I have 4 kids. So the business is shut down. Now I have to homeschool
Wow.
Overnight, 4 kids. And there was a shock time period there to digest everything and to, get our feet under us, because it is an incredible amount of work to take everything we've been doing in person and now make it virtual. So I would say it probably took us 8 weeks before we even really got started on that, and then said, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. What are we going to do? Once it became very obvious this was going to last for quite some time. So, but the good thing is, like I said, the scalability is awesome of going global. Actually, right now, 20% of the subscribers that we have and the people watching our YouTube channel are not in the US, which is really amazing to us, because we only launched our first less than 8 weeks ago, and we already have 20% outside of the US. So that definitely is motivating. We really would love to have a global component to what we do and more of a global audience. I think it opens a lot of doors for us that we didn't know existed by just kind of staying locally. But at the same time, we still have that business model that was working well and that we can still expand upon once schools do resume. So
In my mind, it's almost like a blessing in disguise, especially if you can get back to the physical model that you had on the ground and get back up to where you were as far as numbers of schools and so forth. My example I was going to share is I have a friend in Knoxville that I guess almost 3 years ago opened a biscuits and coffee place. It's called Matt Rob's Biscuits and Brews. And so he had always been a barista at various coffee shops, this and that and the other. And so he started making homemade biscuits and putting anything and everything on them. COVID hit, he shut down. His girlfriend pushed him to, hey, you've never done any online sales. And his business has more than doubled ever since he did just, hey, call, put it on the phone, take the order, set it right outside the restaurant. He just has a little tiny space in downtown Knoxville to begin with. And I mean, it's just exploded. That's when Darren goes, yeah, those are the kind of people that you want to see succeed, that, and sort of the same thing you've done and been able to do, just pivot and still make it work. So I applaud you. I think it's awesome.
thank you.
Yeah, well, you've got the catalog of stuff. You just need to do the conversion. So, I checked it out. I'm like, wow, this production quality is great. I assume that you had some marketing background or had done video before. I was like, oh, this is
Zero.
Well, you're doing a great job.
That's very nice to hear. I appreciate that.
Oh, I was like, oh, man, this is cool.
The only time we had edited a video, or I had edited a video before, we had auditioned to be on Shark Tank for 3 years in a row. So the only time I had edited a video was to submit a video to Shark Tank. But that was just like with iMovie or something. I don't even remember what I used at that time. So it's been huge learning curve to figure out how to we didn't want them to look homemade, but at the same time, we don't mind that people can tell that we're doing it in our house, because that's what we're trying to show other people to do.
Everybody else is doing it
exactly.
Yeah.
And not just during COVID, but in general, we want people. I love just on a Saturday afternoon having fun with my kids doing some random science thing. And there are plenty of other kids out there that love science and parents that want to be able to do that with them. So it doesn't even just need to be a COVID thing. It can just be another way for us to reach people that we wouldn't have been able to reach before.
And I think just the expectation, back to that, of what online meetings look like have changed dramatically in the last year. You don't have to be the equivalent of being in your office in order to get work done. So I think it's become a little more forgiving than what social media generally is.
Yeah, and relatable too. I mean, I think parents appreciate that when you can be related. I'm a mom of 4 kids talking to other parents with kids. Like it's, it doesn't need to be, like you said, we don't want it to be a TV overproduced feel, something in the middle, not where it looks completely amateur, but also not too overproduced. So we're trying to find that balance.
At all.
Oh, thank you.
That's great. And I think the fact that you do have the 4 kids totally helps people relate to you, that you're genuine, real, maybe even a little bit vulnerable. You're doing this at your house. Oh yeah, she has this issue going on. She's not a super mom as she appears to be. You know what I mean? Very relatable, which from the first time I talked to you, that was obvious. I think that goes a long way. You're not salesy. It's not all about, it's adding value, making a difference in those kids' lives, which is awesome.
Just one more thing on the Smarty Cat. Did you, when COVID hit and you realized, oh wow, yeah, we're being shut down here. Did from a business perspective, did you like, man, maybe we should have seen something like that coming, or maybe we should have looked at the virtual side of the business model of this a little bit earlier? Because you know, anybody that predicted COVID is the only person I'm willing to invest money in right now, because nobody did, of course.
Right.
So I mean, it reveals some exposure that we all had. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm certainly looking at multifamily through a little bit different lens. Um, yeah, I'm
Agree.
just wondering if you're like, oh man, we had an exposure we didn't even realize there. And now we really need to diversify long term and run two platforms simultaneously just to hedge.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, hindsight 2020.
Right.
we
Yeah. Oh,
had we
yeah.
had thought about doing, a YouTube channel or something, just to maybe, which basically would have been more just getting our name out there, kind of like another way to advertise our brand. Which it's so much more than that now that we're, I mean, we're really going 100% into the virtual, and seeing where we can take that. But up until COVID, there was no experience. It was really a recession-proof business, to be honest, because the more parents had to work, they didn't just want their kids in latchkey. We're there at the school, giving parents an opportunity to let their kids stay a little bit longer, but know that they're doing something valuable at school, and not just sitting and twiddling their thumbs or doing homework help. I mean, it was really fun programs, and the parents kind of get an extra hour and a half of babysitting time too, to be honest. So as people had to work more, we got busier. And even if, the economy is doing great, we're not in a recession, well, parents are always wanting to invest in their kids. So I started the business in end of 2007, right before, the recession, and it's been very consistent growth. We never really saw any dips. So it was shocking to think that there's something, I never thought that something could just wipe us out like that. We were in so many different locations. So you figure, if one town's not doing well, we're in a bunch of different towns, we're in different states. We thought we had it covered in terms of being secure. And, as a lot of people have learned, nothing in life is really secure, right? You just have to learn how to roll with the punches, because you're right. Nobody could have saw this.
Yeah, I mean, you got completely renewable resource there. People are going to have children. The cupcake thing, I heard that. I'm like, okay, kind of a fad thing. There's some exposure there that can come and go. You don't see many aerobic studios anymore. That kind of came and went. That's a very 80s thing. I don't know if you were even born, but
now it's all yoga.
Yeah, right. So,
that's very flattering. Thank you.
Some of these things can be very, there's a short window, and you got to get in early, ride the wave, try and sell at the top, get out, and then nobody, wants to wear, neon fleece again, or
Right.
whatever the fad was. So you're certainly in something that is more evergreen.
Right. Education's never going anywhere. I think parents will always want to invest in their kids, education.
And trend wise, it may get more home based now.
Absolutely.
Who knows how much reversion you're going to see?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are going toward, well, even before COVID hit, there was a big trend of going toward homeschooling. And then a lot of parents that need that resource. That's the main source of people that have been subscribing to us have been teachers who are looking to figure out they're watching our virtual lessons to figure out how to do it to their classes that they're now having to teach virtual, because they've never had to do that before, just like us. And then a lot of homeschooling parents will watch just for ideas to do with their kids at home. So I think that trend's going to continue. I think, and even my business partner and I, we see a lot of flaws, as I'm sure many people do, in the education system. It's very outdated. And so we're really trying to push that hands-on, inquiry-based, exploration-based, those type of activities, which I think is what the kids are going to need to be resilient and to, have that critical thinking. So when there things like COVID come up in their lives and throughout their careers, they'll have those skills, to be able to adapt to that.
Do you have any relationships with specific STEM programs across the country, whether on the ground or virtual currently?
Another organization, you mean?
Yeah, like science, technology, engineering, math, they call them STEM programs where these schools are specific towards those types of subjects. At
Oh,
least
I
here
see
in
what you're
Tennessee,
saying.
that's what they call them. Yes.
Yeah, we do all STEM and art programs, but we don't work with any schools that are specifically STEM. I think that because we're all elementary age, I think
Okay.
more of that branches out to once you get towards middle and high school, they might have specialized schools.
Oh, I see.
I
Yeah, that makes
don't know
sense.
of any specialized elementary, but some
Yeah.
preschool. There's a lot of Montessori type things. That's a
Right.
big fad right now also. And the hands-on learning is not going anywhere. I'm
Right.
excited that that's growing because I really think it's what the kids need.
I think that could expand into so many different subjects, like shop class and stuff like that down the road. Of course, that is for older children, but I agree with you. School models totally outdated.
Yeah.
And as a traditional, educated, college degree, old school W-2 401 person that I was full time up until 3 years ago, it's college in itself, school in itself, so much they don't teach you, and it's so much waste of time and money.
And I think our generation as parents, we've learned that. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's really going to be interesting to see by the time our kids are parents, what their view of because it's changing so rapidly.
Right.
So
with technology and the access to technology and the internet, there's so much you can do today without any of that formal education stuff.
Absolutely.
You're willing to put in the work.
Hey, it's Greg from Real Wealth Solutions. If you'd like to know more about our passive income opportunities, jump onto realwealth.solutions and hit that schedule a call button. We're always happy to talk about our multifamily and flip projects and to answer any questions you may have. Again, that's realwealth.solutions. We look forward to hearing from you. And now, back to the podcast. I've got a question for you. So it's being, science-based and maybe a little more empirical, I guess. And even business planning, if you're doing a science experiment, you have predictable incomes. If you take this element and combine them in the correct ratios, you can predict the outcome with all other things being constant. And sometimes we do that even in analyzing multifamily. You got a sweet little spreadsheet, you put in all these inputs and it kicks out this plan. Looks great on paper. But then, these units are full of people, which are much more dynamic than combining ingredients to make whatever you're making. I mean, how do you reconcile the analytical side with the reality side? I'll leave it at that. I mean, it's difficult. You're like, well, you come up. I mean, we did it. We had a small business and we did an SBA loan, and they make you do 5,000 pages full of paperwork with all these projections and stuff. It became crystal clear the day we opened that those projections were largely out the window because now we were operating.
Right.
So, how do you reconcile your best laid plans with the day to day? Because on the average, you want to be like, yeah, we're in this range and we're pretty happy. But I'm just curious how you kind of reconcile the analytical mind with how things actually play out.
That's a really interesting question. I'm not that analytical. You would think. Oh. I'm kind of balanced between that and very creative side. So I think that's why I love STEM and art so much, because I really do love art as well. And just from running other businesses, I mean, so Smarty Cat Kids, for example, when my first vision was I was going to rent a retail space and I was going to turn it into a science lab, and kids could take field trips or come after school and come visit me. And I had a meeting with a small business advisor in New Jersey. I think each state provides free small business advisors, but I'm not sure. I know New Jersey did. So I went and had a meeting with them to ask a couple questions about my LLC. I couldn't remember why I went, but he sat me down and had me go over my business plan, and immediately was like, you're going to be out of business if you don't hit the numbers that you need. If everything doesn't go in that perfect rosy direction, what are you going to do? And it was kind of like what you're saying, everything on paper looked great. And then he was like, okay, but what if, this or that? He said, start small and let it snowball. And that way you can be very adaptable. You can see where it's leading you, changes as you go. And so that's what I did. That's why I rented the room at the church and just started doing a traveling business instead of my own large overhead type retail space. And I was able to see from parents, what are they wanting? See from the recs, from the schools, what are they wanting? What am I getting requested? And you can kind of go in that direction. So when it comes to real estate, I mean, I think it's the same kind of thing. You have to have your plan, but you have to have so many contingency plans in there as well, right? If this happens, what are we going to do? If this happens, what are we going to do? And just make sure you're hedging your risks the best you can. I mean, we can't predict the future, but you can, put yourself in a better position, because I understand fully it's not going to go the way it says on paper. Does that make sense?
No, I absolutely it makes sense, because I mean, I'm trying to break stuff all the time. It's like, hey, here's our business plan. How do we wreck it? And, people, not all people, I think sometimes it comes off as being negative, where I think it's just coming off as, hey, things can go sideways.
Yeah.
And here's how we might have to have dealt with it before it happens a little bit. And sometimes, multifamily, a lot of that is just money, just being property capitalized or something like that. But then, and we haven't been talking multifamily a whole lot here, which is fine with me. I love just talking about just business in general, because some of this stuff can just get you thinking and how to apply it to what you're doing, with your apartment complex or anything. What can we do? Okay, COVID hit. How can we apply some of these changes and just how people are coping with work, or should an amenity now look more like a business center instead of a fitness center? Things like that. How do you adapt? So hopefully listeners out there are like, well, they're not talking about multifamily. So we really are just trying to put it into context of what you're going through.
No, hey, we've talked about canning pickles with other guests, so it's no big deal.
Like a long time. Yeah.
We're all about life. Let's talk about multifamily a little bit then. What areas or markets do you look in, have you looked in, do you want to be in, and why?
Yeah, so I'm focused on the Southeast, mainly around Tennessee, because that's where I live. So anywhere from Little Rock up to Southern Kentucky. And then I've helped with a property out in the Carolinas. So I really like the Southeast. A lot of the markets are pretty similar. Nashville and, some of the really higher priced markets, not super focused there. Some of the suburbs, sure. But yeah, Atlanta's been great. Really quite a few. I'm kind of a road warrior. I tell everybody, I love being boots on the ground, because if somebody calls me and is like, hey, I've got a property, like for example, out in Charlotte, I'm in Memphis. That's probably a 7-hour drive. They're like, hey, I've got this property out in Charlotte. And I was like, yeah, I can be there by lunch. Like, I'll have to leave it, before,
do you eat
before
lunch?
before the sun. No, I'll be there by noon. Like, I don't care. I took the kids on a road trip a couple years ago to go to, I went to 49 out of the 50 states. And when I say I don't mind driving, like, I mean, for real, like you call me, I'll drive 6-7 hours. That's a half a day trip for me. So I enjoy that aspect. I enjoy being able to get out and help other people, like a lot of people that I'm working with are out in California or Arizona. Like, just give me a call and I'll go, it gives me an excuse to get out of Lakeland, Tennessee. So.
I know you like to travel. It's funny that you just mentioned that, because I've heard that once before about the 49 out of 50 states. Just being able to do that, well, I guess it's fair to say that your businesses have afforded you that opportunity, and you want to continue to be able to have that flexibility. Like, absolutely. Greg and Kim moved from Alaska a year ago, and just done. We're done in Alaska, but they rent now because they like the ability to be able to, if I want to live in this city for the next 6 months or this city for the next 6 months, not that that's exactly what you're wanting to do, but just have that flexibility. I think that's all why we're in multifamily.
Exactly.
I love that.
And you touched on, a little bit of this business is some of the roles, and boots on the ground is hugely important. And speaking for me specifically, if I don't feel like I have a good grasp of what a property actually is physically in context to the market, I'm not very comfortable with it. So I, went out to Kansas for this deal that we're working on, because I just would not sleep well having not gone out and seeing it. So it's a very vital role for a team to have somebody that can put things into the context of the market, because there's only so much you could do with Google Earth.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you
Yeah.
need to be there or have somebody there in person to talk to other people. And I love market analytics too. I really do. So I like exploring new markets, and I like putting together that info for, helping other teams out in that way. So I'm kind of leaning more towards boots on the ground, just because, again, why do you do anything? We have one life to live. You might as well fill a role that you enjoy. I've learned that certainly through the different business ventures I've had. So I love traveling. I love being that person that's going to say yes when other people will say no, like, yeah, give me a call. I'll be there by noon, whatever you need. So for me, that's like probably my favorite part of my role in a team, is being able to just get in the car and go meet new people and mystery shop or whatever, secret shop, all that kind of stuff. So
And having that willingness to be boots on the ground for anybody really is also, if someone doesn't have a lot of capital, that can be how they're getting into a deal. For those looking out there who listen to this later, if you don't have a lot, that's just one way that you can add value, or both.
Yeah. So you seem to be a little busy. How old are your kids?
my oldest is 15, so he's going to be learning to drive soon, which is crazy. And then my youngest is 2. So I've got a broad
then you
spectrum.
can get some work done in the car while he's driving
Oh gosh.
Hey,
to Greensboro or something.
You can get him a hardship license. He's 15. Go ahead and get him a hardship license. He
Oh
doesn't
my
have to wait
gosh.
till he's 16.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's lots of people that time, there's only so much of it. Eventually you got to fall asleep. What best hacks have you found for time management? I mean, do you use software? Do you just use a list? Do you use your phone? How are you managing all of this?
Definitely time blocking is important for sure. And especially for me, because I know I'm a bit of a workaholic, and I want my kids to always know that there is time that's dedicated just to them. So as funny as it sounds, like, I will be working unless I time block time out not to work. So that's kind of more what I use my time blocking for, is to give myself little breaks and make sure that I'm keeping my priorities straight. But yeah, I have a day planner, definitely use my phone, and then CRM for sure when it comes to the multifamily stuff. That helps me stay on track with my tasks, and I can, as soon as I finish one, I can, plan in automatically what my next one is going to be, and that helps me stay organized.
One comment. Like, I love the time blocking thing. That's helped me exclude. I had a lot of trouble time blocking for, like, dinner with my wife. And I thought, that just sucks. Why do I have to time block? It seemed counterintuitive to me that somehow I was discounting that time by putting it into the schedule, that it didn't seem organic or something. But I had to flip that a little bit, because it was just confirmation of how important it is that I was not going to let other things impede on that time. So it was a little bit of a mind thing for me to, like, oh, I shouldn't be blocking out time to spend with my wife.
You tell your wife, I'll pencil you in, honey.
Yeah, that's exactly,
I know what
it
you
seemed
mean.
very trivial. I'm like, this is stupid. Why, that's not how it should be. I mean, when you're working for yourself, I mean, there's a great danger to be working all the time. There really is always something to do. So I'm always doing something. No, it's not all super high quality priority work. So, you have to just shut down or time block or whatever. That's it. That was my tangent.
I was just gonna. I didn't know you struggled with
Oh, the
that.
CRM.
So anyway.
What CRM do you use?
Active Campaign.
Okay, I've been hearing that one come up a lot. So I'm gonna write that down.
Somebody recommended it to me when I first got started, and I learned it, and so I was like, all right, this works. I'm not learning
that's
anything
more for
else.
Is that email, calendar?
No, it does
the whole thing, or what?
Yeah, it does. It's a CRM, plus you can do email campaigns also, and automations.
So it's above, beyond, like a MailChimp type thing?
Yes, definitely.
It's very useful. Very robust. I know some other experienced operators that use that exact same one. I want to touch on real quick. So your son, 15, and I don't know how old your next oldest child is, but do they maybe help you in any shape, form, or fashion with your business when you need it, whatever it is, like helping out? I mean, do they help you out? Do you depend on them?
I see you putting them on the payroll. I think I saw a post about it. Like, how do you put kids on your payroll? You do some.
Well, especially for Smarty Cat, because so my middle two are 10 and 9. So they're the perfect age. They love doing the activities. They love filming with me. Of course, every 10 and 9-year-old wants to be a YouTube star, quote unquote. So they're very excited to go tell their friends they're on YouTube now. My oldest, he's 15. It's been a little bit of a struggle. Doesn't really want to listen to what mom says. I've tried to get him interested in coming with me and looking at properties, and he's at an age where he's just kind of fighting me on it. So I don't push it too hard because I don't, he's very, very, very into electric guitar.
I was just about to say he's a guitar player.
And he's good at it. So I'm like, you know what? Whatever his passion is, I'm going to encourage that in every way I can. And I just try to give him little mindset nudges, as I can. And we do a lot of things together, but he's not really interested in the business so far. So maybe one day that'll change. Maybe he'll just start his own business or his own thing. We'll see.
So with all you have going on every day, is there something that I know number one is going to be probably your kids that motivate you? Do you have no problem with self-motivation? Is there something you need occasionally, or if there is, where do you get it from? What keeps you going? What's that look like on a daily, weekly basis for Michelle?
So yeah, I've always been pretty motivated and pretty positive. I don't have too much of a hard time, I do get down on myself and things like that, or self-conscious, or can I do this? But I've become pretty good at flipping that switch. I really love impact theory. That's like my go-to if I'm struggling. Have you guys heard of impact theory?
No. What is that?
I'm going to butcher his name. Tom Bilyeu. I think it's Bilyeu. But it's on YouTube, and his interviews are phenomenal. And every time I listen to that, it just gets me in that better mindset. So my kind of go-to if I'm really struggling is I'll walk my dog and put that in my headphones, and then I feel better by the time I'm back. Take a quick hour to just reset. But my why, other than obviously my kids, I have always wanted to just try to be of service in any way I can to more people. Like I went to Guatemala last year. That was very eye-opening to help build a school there. And I really want to be able to do more of that. And I understand that in order for me, it's almost like putting your oxygen mask on first in the plane, right? If it's going down, I have to be the best version of me so then I can let my cup overflow to other people. So that's kind of what keeps me pushing towards my own personal goals, is because I know when I reach my own goals, I'll be able to then overflow, so to speak, to other people. So
is that self-learned? Is that a prophecy you have by yourself, parents, friends? Where'd that come from? Where'd that drive come from? I mean, really?
I don't know. I think it's always kind of been my personality. My dad is a pastor, so I'm sure that helped.
Okay. Yeah.
But he's not really, my parents weren't thrilled when I became an entrepreneur. They very much wanted me to become the high school biology teacher.
Yeah.
So I remember when I told my mom I was going to start my own science company, she said, that 85% of new businesses fail, right? And I was like, well, here's to the 15, Mom.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Somebody's making it. So anyway, I was kind of the black sheep in the family, and always kind of, went to the beat of my own drum. And I don't know, I'm kind of a free spirit. I just like it. So
Well, it sounds like, you had Smarty Cat to the point. It didn't sound like you were working in the business that much, that you were, running it, not necessarily giving lessons on a regular basis.
Right.
So, and that's something that real estate, whether it's multifamily or mobile home parks or whatever, you can also do. You can run that business from anywhere. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of the attraction as well, because even if you are in Guatemala, you can still be talking to your third-party managers or your team and have that building/business keep going without you physically having to be there. So that's, one of the huge upsides of entrepreneurship in general, when you get to the level that you're no longer having to show up and bake the cupcakes.
Yeah, I think once you learn how to put the systems in place, you can really apply that to almost anything. So it's just choosing, what do you really want to do? Because I have I have had in the past a bad habit of trying to do all things. Well, this sounds interesting. Let me try that and this and this. And now it's, like I said before, it's become very obvious. I need to focus in on what's truly I'm going to enjoy. And I do have some sort of passion for. And I think multifamily, a part of the appeal for me too, is, like you said, knowing that there's people living in those in those units, and you can have an impact on communities by, rehabbing the properties and just making it better. And you can help, increase some sort of way of touch their lives of other families. And so that's definitely a part of the appeal too.
Yeah, I agree with that. We bought our first property 2 years ago, and it was a huge, huge lift. We're still rehabbing it. But I remember the day I first saw patio furniture on one of the completed units for someone who moved in. It was just very gratifying, just that simple. Just seeing that, knowing that, we'd made a difference and the property looked 100 times better. That was someone's home.
Exactly. Absolutely.
I found that first distribution very gratifying.
Yeah.
As well.
It doesn't hurt.
I'm not going to.
That doesn't hurt.
One doesn't happen without the other. So,
Yeah, your distributions are proof that you're doing a good job.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Exactly. Greg, you got anything else? You got any Greg questions? Business?
Can I think we have a few minutes before you have to go. Could we talk about the Women's Mastermind Facebook style? Tell us a little bit about that. What's specifically going on there, and a little about why you found it necessary.
Yeah, so I think, we're obviously not anti-men in any kind of way.
Yeah.
But
I know. I think that it comes off that way sometimes. I'm just like, really? They're just everybody's just trying to grow. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, and I've heard, and there's an argument that can be made for, well, what if we said this is a men's only group? And there are men's only groups, and that's fine. We function in different ways, and we understand each other differently. It just is what it is. And a lot, most of us are moms in that group, and there is a different dynamic to trying to run your real estate company while being a mom, and there's just unique challenges. So, and it's a place we can be a little bit more vulnerable and not have things taken a certain way. I don't know.
I totally get that.
We felt it was necessary. So, so there were a couple things. So our three keywords are empowerment, encouragement, and collaboration. So we really wanted it to be a place that we can come in and lift each other up and encourage each other, but also to actually form partnerships within the mastermind. So really the only requirements are, we did not want to be like beginner level. There's so many coaching programs and free resources. And if you don't know much about multifamily, there's a lot of places you can go to find that information. We're not trying to coach anybody. So it's more so if you're already active in the multifamily space, not necessarily closed a deal yet. I haven't closed my first deal yet, but you're actively looking, you know what you're doing, you're ready to go kind of thing. So it's all women that are very much active in the multifamily space. And that's exciting. And we get to, help each other through that process. And we do the monthly Zoom meetings where we bring on a special guest. We cover different topics. We just had a really great meeting with Ashley Wilson on asset management and construction management. We've had a lot of great topics covered. And then, once COVID calms down, we're going to get back to offering our in-person mastermind meetups as well. So it's a really cool place. If there's any women listening that would like to join, it's Multifamily Women's Mastermind on Facebook.
I love the fact that you had a plan to mastermind to Cabo. And the reason I'm bringing that up is Greg and I have talked about, and Kim, obviously, doing a mastermind in Alaska. And that's not you're not going to have everyone that can make that trip and or want to make that trip. So I think by doing that, the people that you end up getting there, you should have some high level people in a space or that can make things happen. So I love the fact that you're like, you know what? We're not going to the Smoky Mountains. We're going to Cabo.
Yeah.
So I think
and we had
that's
a lot of very powerful women that were on the roster. So
no,
we'll make it happen. 2021, fingers crossed.
that's great.
Yeah, I mean, this will pass. And
Yeah, I think so. As what I've learned, and actually having a blessed opportunity to be an actual coach in another education program, I tell every single couple and woman I talk to is like, look, you have the ability to connect with people that I could never connect with, or your husband, whether it's with a lender, a broker, a property manager. And yes, it's the fact that you are a woman, point blank, plain and simple. And sometimes they don't realize that because they're still, kind of back in the shadows. And if you can help them to realize that, and they can be a powerful part of that team, it's hugely impactful. And so I love sending them your way and just seeing how, they can make a difference and vice versa. I think it's awesome.
It's always appreciated too. You've been so great with sending women and letting us connect with each other. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, when I'm with Ken, I walk into a room with a little bit different swagger, because I mean, we fulfill different roles.
Exactly.
And I'm less social.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Kim and I are a lot alike in that regard. And she does stuff that nobody even knows about behind the scenes that make our lives so much easier, especially for me. For Greg too, but for me for different reasons.
Yeah.
Oh golly.
All right. Well, I know you got to get kids to school, so we'll wrap up. We'll drop all your stuff in the show notes. Encourage people to go check out Smarty Cat TV. It's super cool. If you got kids in these times, go to Joann's or Michael's, get a toolbox full of stuff, and Michelle can keep them busy for a little while. And other than that, I'll sign off, Darren. We want to thank you again for joining us here. Oh, what? Darren's about to say something.
Yeah. So Michelle, tell the listeners all the multiple ways they can get in touch with you, please.
Yeah. So if you're interested in the Smarty Cat TV, that's just simple, smartycattv.com. On Facebook, it's Smarty Cat TV. On YouTube, it's Smarty Cat TV. So that one's easy to remember. If you want to get in touch with me personally, I'm on Facebook, or Michelle at integrityequitygroup.com. And then, of course, the Multifamily Women's Mastermind. We'd love to see some more women there. So that's on Facebook as well.
Awesome.
Right on. All right. Thank you all joining us here, Real Wealth Solutions Podcast. We will see you on the next episode. Later. Bye.